Hello you lot, my name is Max, welcome back to my YouTube channel and another Nottingham Forest match preview, where today we are discussing Forest's final home game before the World Cup break, taking on Patrick Vieira's Crystal Palace team, a side that has assembled a really good mix of eclectic talent from across Europe, and a team that I'm really excited to do a deep dive into with you today. If you're new around here and you're not familiar with this kind of series, what we normally do is start by giving some context to the season thus far for our opposition. We then talk a bit more about the stats and some of their key players, followed by an analysis of their tactics and eventually an overall scoreline prediction for the match. So if you enjoy that kind of stuff, don't forget to drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel and ring that notification bell so you don't miss a single video. Check out my TikTok as well, it's as always linked in the description to this video. We're very close to 100 followers over there, and stay tuned this week for my World Cup predictions. Well, that being said, let's start talking about Patrick Vieira's Crystal Palace. So as we usually do, we'll be starting by providing some context to our opposition and their season thus far. And it's been a really good start to the season for Crystal Palace, picking up where they left off last season, where they finished 12th in the Premier League after a season of real overhaul. They managed to drastically bring down the age of their squad, obviously brought in a new manager in Patrick Vieira, who's managed the likes of Nice, New York City FC, has a pretty good track record as a manager, and have done a really good job, like I say, in rejuvenating that squad. And a big part of that is their sporting director, Doogie Freedman, of course, a name quite familiar to most Reds. And this season they find themselves, at the time of recording, at least in 10th position, really, like I say, picking up from where they left off last season, made some really good signings in the summer transfer window, and have started the season pretty well. And some of the signings that they've made over the last couple of seasons that I've particularly been impressed with are Odsonne Edouard arriving from Celtic, of course, Chet Doucouré coming in from that midfielder player who I quite highly advocated for Forest to sign during the summer, Michael OLISE arriving from the Championship, where they've done quite a lot of their recruitment, where they also picked up Joachim Andersen from Fulham, of course Mark Gahey and Chris Richards as well at centre-back, a really good deep pool of young talent in most positions on the pitch. And really, with the World Cup around the corner, you have to feel like the sky's the limit for this Crystal Palace team. If they can finish off 2022 in style, you have to feel like they could potentially make a late run for European football, maybe a Europa Conference League spot come the end of this season, as unlikely as that may seem. And I definitely think this is one of the teams to watch in the second half of the season as they begin to gel together. So that being said, let's start talking a little bit more in depth about the stats and some of those key metrics for this Palace team. When you look at Palace under the hood, they're a side who over the last couple of seasons have been pretty consistent in both their attacking and defensive metrics. They've scored the 13th most goals in the Premier League this season with 15, and have done this from, again, around 15 expected goals, meaning they're pretty much batting at around the expected finishing rate they would expect for a team in the Premier League. It is worth noting, though, this is the third worst expected goals tally this season in the Premier League, but I guess you could also caveat this by saying they've already played 5 of the big 6, 15 games into this season, so they definitely have an easier run of fixtures leading into the Christmas period. And again, when we look at things in a little bit more depth, they are generally an average team for most attacking metrics, pretty middling for most of these. If we look at things like proximity to goal of shots, if we look at their shots per 90 minutes, they're a team that are very much more or less middle ground, conversion rate as well, and this is definitely good reading for a solid Premier League unit. When we flip things over though, this is completely different reading. Their defensive record this season has actually been really good and might have actually gone under the radar as one of the best outside of the Big Six. They've conceded 17 goals so far this season, the joint 6th best record in the Premier League this campaign, and have conceded less goals than the likes of Tottenham and Manchester United, which I personally think is quite impressive. You may not think is impressive because they're obviously not having the best of seasons, but still pretty decent and worth noting. And it isn't even like they're particularly overperforming their expected goals. Their XG suggests they should have conceded around 20, which again puts them around 8th or 9th in the Premier League table on expected goals, and generally have just had a really solid defensive display this season. But when you look at their defensive record in a little bit more detail, there isn't really one glaring thing that suggests why they've conceded so few goals. They haven't got a particularly exceptional goalkeeper. Gaeta saving at pretty much around league average so far this season when we look at things like save percentage and post-shot expected goals. They don't concede particularly few shots. They're again about mid-table, and their average shot distance conceded is again around mid-table. What they've just been able able to do is defend really well as a unit, and when they get the opportunity to break out and counter-attack, they again do this really well as an attacking team. And really, I think that's quite a consistent theme, having seen them on a couple of occasions thus far this season in the Premier League. I've been really impressed with just how solid a unit they are. They're very hard to break down, they don't make things easy for their opposition, and when they do get the opportunity to break out, they're very quick and very direct at breaking out on the counter-attack. So I think it's about time we speak about that in a little bit more detail and start talking about the tactics of this Palace team and what we can expect on the day. So in terms of tactical analysis for this Palace team, it's going to be a little bit more succinct than it has been in recent weeks, because what there is to say about Crystal Palace, there isn't much that hasn't been said already in terms of the shape and the way in which they play. So I'm more going to be sort of giving a brief overview of what we can expect. And in terms of their shape, it's been pretty flexible in terms of the approach that they've taken on a game-by-game basis, although they have more or less fallen on either a 4-1-4-1 or a 4-3-3 shape, looking to get lots of width into the channel and looking to spread the play as quickly as possible from the back. Really, their biggest threats in this team are in these wide areas in the blue, as you can see. Their wingers are very good one-on-one, the likes of Zaha, OLISE, say in that midfield. They're very good players at receiving the ball one-on-one and just completely skinning their defender, going wide and getting lots of aggressive pace and width into this team. With a centre forward like Odsonne-Edouard, Zaha can play there as well, who can finish off the chances generated for them. What's really important for their build-up as well is the long distribution that they have from their back line, particularly from Joachim Andersen, one of the best long passing defenders in the Premier League at the moment. Quite often, and we saw this against Arsenal at the beginning of the season, you'll see him pick up the ball in these deeper positions with the opposition pushing their back line up and just sort of launching these balls over the top for the likes of Zaha, Eze, OLISE to run onto and try and create opportunities from. And his long distribution is fantastic for this Palace team and definitely something worth us looking to capitalise on or try and mitigate. And you would think this makes them a team that gets caught offside quite often, but actually they're one of the best teams in terms of their discipline in their forward line. The timing of their runs from in to out, or these sort of outside curved runs, is fantastic. And when they get these long balls over the top from Andersen, more often than not they do come off, and they're very good at getting the ball either into space behind the back line or into the space between the lines to drop into and link up play. It's not the only way in which they build up. Of course, they can do more traditional build up through the lines kind of thing, getting the ball into the forwards, but they do like to go long more often than not. It's something that they do really like to have in their playbook, and definitely something worth looking out for. Now, in terms of their defensive shape and their pressing, Palace are actually a team that don't generally press that aggressively. If we look at things like passes per defensive action, they're one of the lowest ranking teams in the Premier League for press intensity. And this could give us opportunities in the middle of the park where we may have sustained periods of possession with the likes of Freuler, with the likes of Yates, where we can get the ball forward, maybe not under necessarily the amount of pressure that you would have under someone like Brentford or a Brighton or a Southampton, for example. And to talk a bit more specifically about Forest, looking back at that Carabao Cup game against Spurs during the week in which we pulled off that impressive 2-0 victory, one of the ways in which we were really able to hurt this Spurs side was through breaking quickly into the wide areas, getting the ball into these areas of the pitch and really punishing Tottenham for pushing their fullbacks up and really moving into the space vacated by them. And if we can do that against Crystal Palace, it could be a little bit of a basketball match, this one. It could be bouncing up and down the pitch. But if we can really punish them by getting into these wide areas vacated by the fullbacks, if they do choose to push up and be a bit more adventurous, it could yield us really good goal scoring opportunities. We saw Surridge doing a really good job at peeling into these wide areas. Lingard naturally wants to do that, coming into the space between the lines and then driving into wider areas. And of course, Taiwo is in decent goal scoring form at the moment as well. So it could provide us good opportunities by breaking into those wide areas to create and cause real problems for this Palace team. In terms of a scoreline, I'm actually quite optimistic about this match, as I'm sure a lot of Forest fans are. We've only lost one of our last 8 games, that game against Arsenal a couple of weeks ago. We've kept some really important clean sheets and impressive ones at that against the likes of Brighton, Liverpool and Tottenham most recently in the Carabao Cup. So I'm going to go for a 1-0 win. I think Taiwo is going to get the goal and continue to prove to be one of our better signings from the summer window. And in general, I think it's going to be a good performance. We're really starting to find our feet in the Premier League, and I'm hoping we can keep up the pace and get hopefully to within touching distance of getting out of the relegation zone when we come back from the international break for the World Cup. With that being said though, let me know your scoreline predictions for this match in the comment section down below, and whilst you're down there, don't forget to drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel and ring that notification bell so you don't miss a single match preview when they return after the World Cup, as well as some exclusive World Cup content I've got coming out over the next few weeks, including my World Cup predictions coming this week, so stay tuned for that. With that being said though, thank you very much for watching. Enjoy the game if you're going Reds. I will catch you later.